Good afternoon. I'm in a cemetery. Anybody else? Anybody else in a cemetery? I'm over in South Dallas, south of the Trinity River, which is our major river. Kind of denotes north and south as it runs south of downtown Dallas. So that's where I'm at, South Dallas, in a cemetery. Hey, Genghis. You like cemeteries, Genghis? Yeah. Lovely South Dallas. It's a little sunny, but it's a little chilly still this morning. Alright. See if a few more people join. Oh, let me check my settings. There we go. Yeah, the sun is out. It's gonna be a beautiful day. Howdy, Ben. Yeehaw. I'm in a cemetery, Ben. Yeah, look at me. I took y'all out to a cemetery. This is a good one, though. Y'all are going to be like, what? It's a good cemetery. I'm in a cemetery. It's called Western Heights Cemetery, South Dallas. Well, Choppy, this is the oldest cemetery in Dallas. Now, I'm real close to downtown. There's a busy road nearby. But back in the day, this used to be just prairie lands. The cemetery first began in 1840. Hey, Adrian. Yeah, thank you. Choppy likes cemeteries. So this is the oldest cemetery in Dallas. Western Heights Cemetery. They first started burying people here. They don't even know. Sometime in the early 1840s, apparently, there was a trail that the settlers used to use. Back then, this place was unsettled. They used to travel along the Trinity River, which is nearby, and a few people died. Some settlers in a group died. A few people, they buried them here. Unmarked graves. We don't know where they're at now, where they're buried. But that started this to be a graveyard. The first person documented buried here was 1846. Don't go at night. Yeah, before the Civil War. But this, and I know you can't read. There's one marker. It's backwards, I'm sure. This guy was born in 1847, died in 1893. He wasn't very old. So that's one of the early markers here. The cemetery, now here's one. Anyone who's a veteran is marked with this. This gentleman was a veteran of the Confederate Army. Tuggle. William Thomas. Died in 1925. So there's several veterans buried here. This cemetery is not maintained really by anyone or owned by anyone. It's mostly taken care of by volunteers. So, but this is a special cemetery and someone famous is buried here. Someone famous. I'm assuming that you'll know who this is. And I'm going to show you. their grave. Terry! Don't do, Terry, not today, Terry. Not today. I'm in a cemetery. Trying to kill me? You can see the cemetery behind me. Just maintained by volunteers. Not an active cemetery. But I'm going to tell you, before I show you this famous grave, somebody famous is buried here, y'all. I think I'm going to blow y'all's minds. I hope I am. If y'all don't know who this person is that's buried here, I'm going to be surprised. No, it's not Larry Hagman. But before I show you around, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about this cemetery. Like I said, it's the oldest one. It's believed that several strangers, settlers, died here sometime in the 1840s, and they buried them, and it began this being a graveyard, like I said. This area was bought by a gentleman named William Coombs, who was a settler here in the area. He bought this land. Now, at the time, so when Coombs came here and bought this land, he bought this land from the Republic of Texas. From 1836 to not John Kennedy. From 1836 to 1846, Texas was its own nation, the Republic of Texas. So this cemetery was founded during the Republic of Texas. John Coombs moved here. He bought this land and a bunch of land around here. He was an early settler, and a community began eventually in this area along the Trinity River. John Coombs sold off plots. He sold this plot to a group of settlers called La Reunion. They were French settlers, and they bought a bunch of land around here. There are several of those French settlers buried here in this graveyard. John Coombs sold this land to them for $15 for a graveyard. There were already people buried here, though. But, so there was a French settlement in this area. Now, at the same time, Dallas, on the other side of the Trinity River, was beginning to be a settlement. So, at the same time Dallas was brand new, this settlement, this French settlement, was brand new on this side of the Trinity River. It's not Kennedy, Monroe, or Lafayette. Was buried here. So there's a few the Coombs, several of them are buried here, the early settler that bought this land. Let's see. I'm trying to see. There's a few other people. A lot of, like I said, a lot of the French settlers were buried here, including the founder of this settlement called La Reunion, was French native Jean Lupeau and his wife. They are also buried here in the cemetery. Let's see. Mrs. Anna Marie Struck purchased 1/6 acre in the cemetery, and their whole Struck family is buried here. They immigrated from Germany, and Carl Struck served in the World War I. Not Robert E. Lee, no. General Gano, a licensed medical doctor, was a remarkable man. He gave up medicine to join the Confederate Army and fought in over 70 battles during the Civil War as a cavalry officer, and 5 horses were shot out from underneath him. That is crazy. He was wounded only once. After the war, he settled in Dallas County, and he's buried here. I'll try to find his grave marker. Buffalo Bill. I'll give a clue in a minute, Terry. I'll give a clue in a minute. Like I said, this place is maintained mostly by volunteers. The Boy Scouts of America do a lot of work here, but it's not, it's not in perfect condition. but for, nobody taking care of it, it's in pretty good shape. The first baby girl born in the Dallas area, according to records, in the 1840s, the first baby girl born in this area, in the Dallas area, is buried here. That's kind of weird too, right? Let's see. There are about 733 people buried here, they think, but a lot of graves are not marked. They're still unearthing markers and finding more graves. And all of the veterans of war have a medallion flag holder, which is put there by the Boy Scouts of America. General Custer, that was long. He didn't die anywhere near here, but good guess. Let's see, a few more people that are buried here. I'll try to find their graves. Captain Zachariah Ellis Coombs, a lawyer, a Confederate Army officer, and member of the Texas House of Representatives. John Lupeau and his wife Rosina Lupeau, the founders of La Reunion, the French settlement in this area in 1840. Ida Mae Murphy and her husband James Andrew Murphy, they were noted. So in 1908, there was a big flood. I am in low-lying area south of the Mississippi River. And in 1908, there was a giant flood that killed a bunch of people here on the south side of the Trinity River when it overflowed its banks. Now there are dikes, flood walls. But back then in 1908, there was a big flood. A lot of people died. Some of them are buried here, including this one lady that I just mentioned. She saved a bunch of folks during that flood. And she's buried here. Okay, I'm going to go towards I'm at the back of the cemetery, which is a little quieter. But because you can see downtown from here. It's only about 3 or 4 miles south of downtown Dallas. This is a busy area. There's a busy street out front. It's going to get noisy. But I have to go out there to show you this famous grave. There's actually 2 famous people here. You want a clue? What if I say an infamous Texas outlaw is buried here? Does that sound more interesting? Does that sound more fun? I'm gonna make my way up there. So, he's a famous criminal from Dallas. He grew up here. He was born outside of Dallas. Now, he wasn't from the 1840s. He's a little bit later in time. I think 1930s. He's buried here. He's a criminal. He's famous. Not Doc Holliday. Got to think later, 1930s. I mean, I'm assuming you know who this guy is. He's world famous. A famous 1930s, think gangsters. Although he wasn't a gangster. But it's that area of the time in the U.S. when people like Pretty Boy Floyd were robbing banks. Not Billy the Kid. These are some pretty cool graves around here too. I mean, like I said, there's so many other ones. This one died in 1922. A lot of these gravestones are Al Capone. No, he's not from Texas. But now you're in the right era. Here's one Just hand scratched tombstone. Died in 1936. Al Capone? No, he's not a gangster, this guy. He's a bank robber, though, and a murderer. Says that person died in 2001, but that doesn't seem right. I'm trying to show you something else as I walk around, let y'all guess. What if I tell you, I'll give you Tom Nix. What if I tell you this? He was part of a famous, look at this, they're just digging this one out. There's nothing written on it. They've just found this marker. They don't know who's buried there. Genghis. Choppy. You're right. Clyde Barrow. And his brother Buck. And his family. His parents. They're all buried here. He was from here. I don't know if you knew that, but Bonnie and Clyde were from Dallas. They were both born outside of the area. They met in Dallas. They lived in Dallas. Their family lived in Dallas. The whole Clyde Barrow family, his parents, his mom, his dad, siblings, they're all buried here. I'm taking you to his grave right now. It's at the front. It might get noisy. Clyde Barrow, y'all. Is this a cool field trip? Clyde Barrow, put to rest right here in his hometown of Dallas. The famous Bonnie and Clyde. They met not far from here. They're from this side of town. And here we come. You see, it's visited. People put flowers. People leave cigarettes. Check that out. This is Clyde and his brother. So his brother, Marvin, was known as Buck. Buck was part of the Barrow gang. And they're buried side by side. They have one marker. This is Clyde Barrow and his brother Buck. Died May 23rd, 1934. Gone but not forgotten. Look, people leave cigarettes for Clyde. There's a British flag. No, that's an Australian flag. And someone from Australia came and visited and left something. It's like there's a flower. Look, there's a little gun. A little plastic gun. And some other stuff. Bonnie and Clyde fame, Clyde Barrow. Now Bonnie is not buried here. Bonnie is buried in Dallas. This is his parents, I think, his siblings. All the Barrows are buried right here. And there it is. Choppy, that is not true. Bonnie robbed places. Bonnie murdered people. Choppy. Bonnie Parker and Clyde were murderers. They killed a lot of people. She was in a lot of gunfights, and she even robbed places without Clyde. Sometimes her and Buck or other members of the Barrow gang would go out in different groups. But she was a getaway driver a lot of times. So I'm right. As you can see, I'm right. I am right in the middle of Dallas. What do y'all think about that? Bonnie and Clyde. So Bonnie wanted to be buried with Clyde. She even wrote a poem about it. I'll read the poem in a little bit. But her mother was not going to allow it. Her mother was so angry at Clyde and blamed him for everything that her mother would not allow Bonnie's final request to be buried next to Clyde. So she's buried in another cemetery in the north part of Dallas. Kind of looking around, there are a lot of Civil War veterans here from both armies, because you got to imagine, even though I'm in the heart of downtown right now, or the heart of Dallas right now, this is an old cemetery. I'm trying to look for war veterans markers so I can show you some of those. But yeah, there's soldiers from all over. You can see these are really old. There's the Murphys. This guy died in 1912, J.A. Murphy. We talked about the Murphys. I mentioned them earlier. They're the family that, it's probably all haunted, Genghis. They're the family that helped save people during the flood, the Murphy family. Over here is the Struck family, which is all buried here. They were early settlers. I haven't found the Lupont family yet, but they were the French settlers. But the Strucks here, this family, they bought this entire plot. You see the matriarch, all these people along there, they're all the Struck family. They were prominent early settlers. And they have all these. This is their family marker, Struck family. And so this is the German guy. Died in 1917. That's his wife. So, kind of in the back corner now. About 700 people buried here. Is the video quality okay? Because I'm in a low-lying area. And sometimes I might not get a great signal back here. Because just south of the Trinity, it gets low. That's why it flooded here. But yeah, there's only about 400 marked graves. Sorry, I think it said, but 700 people buried here. This guy, or this woman, died in 1930. No, 1877, sorry, 1877. Okay, it's a good picture. Okay, I wasn't sure because I can't tell if it's a bad picture. But yeah, it used to flood over here. So I'm gonna sit down for a minute. I want to try to find the Lupont, the French settlers in this area, but I haven't found them yet. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story of Bonnie and Clyde. Is there anybody here that's like, I never heard of Bonnie and Clyde? I'm just curious. I mean, so this guy, He's a Confederate soldier. And look, there's a little barcode. You can scan it and find out all about him, which is pretty cool. This person died in 1907. Looks like that tombstone cracked and they put it back together. Martin Gaunt, she was a Confederate soldier. There's somebody here. Can't see. Okay, so he's a U.S. veteran. This guy's a Confederate War veteran. Okay, so I was just wondering, has anybody not heard of Bonnie and Clyde? Another Confederate War veteran. You've heard of them too, Terry and Choppy and Genghis, obviously guessed correctly. Another Confederate War veteran. His wife died in 1915. And there's just little markers like this. And they don't know who's buried there. In 1939. So this place was still burying people. Even into the 1900s. Here's a pretty big marker. Confederate soldier, war veteran Winfrey. But Clyde Barrow is buried here. Okay, this guy is a Grand Army. That means he served he served for the Union Army. Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty played him in the movie. That is right. I'm gonna sit down for a minute. I'm gonna try to find a few more graves after this, but I will tell you a little bit about Bonnie and Clyde. The movie, starring Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty, is not altogether accurate. It's not exactly, well, it's largely not the truth. They took a lot of liberties in that movie, but it's a good movie. It's a real good movie. Everybody's seen that? Faye Dunaway as Bonnie Parker. Warren Beatty as Clyde Barrow, who's buried right over here. He's buried right over here. Is that cool? I think it's pretty cool. So, they're only about a year apart in age, Bonnie and Clyde. They're American outlaws. They traveled the central United States with their gang, the Barrow Gang. During the Great Depression, they committed a series of criminal acts such as bank robberies, kidnappings, and murders between 1932 and 1934. They were known for their bank robberies and multiple murders, although they preferred to rob small stores or rural gas stations. Their exploits captured the attention of the American press, and they were eventually ambushed and killed in Louisiana by retired Texas Ranger Frank Hammer. They are believed to have murdered at least 9 police officers and 3 civilians. They were murderers. The 1967 film Bonnie and Clyde, directed by Arthur Penn and starring Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, despite being highly fictionalized and historically inaccurate, was a critical and commercial success. So, they were bad people. Yeah, Jane Austen, right? They weren't good people, but they were glamorized by the press. And the movie continued to help glamorize them. But Bonnie Parker was born in just outside of Dallas in a place called Rowena, Texas. She liked to write poetry. And it said she married at 19. Okay, so she was married to someone else, not 19, 16. Yeah, she was married 6 days before her 16th birthday to Roy Thornton. They never divorced. She was married the whole time to Roy Thornton. They separated. They never saw each other again after 1929. She died in 1934. Thornton was in prison. Her husband was in prison when he heard of her death. Her husband was killed while trying to escape prison in 1937, Roy Thornton. After she left Thornton, she moved back in with her mother in Dallas. So they lived in an area in Dallas, Clyde and Bonnie, that was called the cemetery slums. So they used to make a lot of cemetery factories were in this area of Dallas at the time, and villages, settlements, communities popped up. The workers of these villages, they were slums. That's where they grew up. They grew up in the cemetery slums of Dallas, both Bonnie and Clyde. Mick Jagger's granddad is buried at Old Cemetery in Whitehaven. Yeah, they were highly romanticized, Genghis. So Clyde was born just south of here in a county called Ellis County. He was the fifth of 7 children. So they're all buried over there by his grave, where their family plot is. He grew up in the urban slum of West Dallas. That's what I was talking about. They lived, when he was a child, they lived in tents. So he had a rough life. He was first arrested, and this is what changed his life, okay? He was first arrested in 1926 at age 17 after running when police confronted him over a rental car that he had failed to return on time. It wasn't a serious crime. He was arrested at 17. He had a few legitimate jobs after that. He used to steal cars. He used to rob stores. At 19, he met Bonnie Parker through a mutual friend. And then he was arrested again and convicted of auto theft. She snuck in a gun into the McLennan County Jail in Waco, Texas, where he was, and he escaped. He was 19, he escaped jail because she snuck him in a gun. He was recaptured on March 18th. He was sent to Huntsville State Prison, and he was assigned to the Easton Prison Farm at the age of 21. He was sexually assaulted in prison. He retaliated by attacking and killing his tormentor with a pipe, crushing his skull. This was his first murder. That changed him, that stint in prison. He became very angry at the penal system in the United States. And what happened next, because of that anger that he had, that he felt like when he was in prison, the whole prison system was corrupted. He was raped in prison. He committed his first murder in prison. And he was so angry about the whole thing that that's what sparked everything he did. His murderous spree. His plan was to get enough money and weapons to launch an attack on the prison where he was. That was his motivation through the whole thing. He was mad about what happened to him in prison. To avoid hard labor in the fields when he was in prison, he cut off 2 of his toes so he wouldn't have to go and work in the fields. What he didn't know, that his mother had petitioned for his release, and he was set free 6 days after he cut off 2 of his toes. He had a limp for the rest of his life. He did it because he didn't want to go to work out in the fields, but then he got released 6 days later. His weapon that he loved was the BAR, the Browning automatic rifle. You see it in pictures. He loved it. So they did rob and murder a bunch of places. They killed a bunch of people. I'm trying to see. Mostly they killed police officers. On August 5th, Beryl, Raymond Hamilton, and Ross Dyer were drinking moonshine at a county dance in Oklahoma when Sheriff C.J. Maxwell and Deputy Eugene C. Moore approached them in the parking lot. Beryl opened fire, killing Moore and gravely wounding Maxwell. So they just did not care. This happened several other times. Beryl killed Tarrant County Deputy Malcolm Davis on January 6th when he, Parker, and Jones wandered into a police trap set for another criminal. At this point, the gang had murdered 5 people. Clyde's brother Buck was also in prison. He was granted a full pardon and released from prison, and he and his wife Blanche set up housekeeping with Bonnie, Clyde, and Jones in a temporary hideout in Joplin, Missouri. They were just there to visit. Eventually, someone called the Missouri Police Department because they thought it was suspicious activity, and the police just came to check it out, didn't know who it was. When the police showed up, the Barrow brothers and Jones opened fire, killing Detective Harry L. McGinnis outright and fatally wounded Constable J.W. Harriman. They were not kidding around. They escaped, but they left behind in Joplin most of their possessions, including a roll of film. And you've seen these pictures. These pictures helped to make them famous. This roll of film was developed, leaked to the press. You've probably seen a photo of like Bonnie holding a gun pointed at Clyde. She's got a cigar in her mouth. This famous pictures from this roll of film they left behind when they murdered these police officers in Joplin. It leaked to the press, and that's what made them start to get famous. You've probably seen these pictures before. She's pointing a shotgun right at Clyde. She got a cigar in her mouth. They went as far north as Minnesota. They unsuccessfully tried to rob a bank in Indiana, but they did rob one in Minnesota. They kidnapped Dillard Darby and Sophia Stone in Ruston, Louisiana, while they were stealing their car. They did release them, though, with money. They gave them some money and told them to get out. Members of the gang included Hamilton Jones, Buck Barrow, his brother, and Henry Methan. Cold-blooded murders. There were times when they were all shot. Clyde was shot, Bonnie was shot. Buck received a wound to the head. They would never go to hospitals. Right before they got captured, his brother Buck had a head injury so bad that they could see his brain. He was shot in the head. But they never would go to the hospital. They had a car wreck near Wellington, Texas. The car flipped into a ravine, lit on fire, and Parker sustained third-degree burns to her right leg. She didn't go to the hospital, though. She had to be carried for a long time. Let's see. Trying to see where it talks about a couple of times where she robbed a place with another gang member without him. But she did do that. Let's see. Another time they were staying in Platte City, Missouri when police approached them. And they killed some people there. I'm trying to see who they killed. They got into a gunfight with them. They killed a couple of officers. Again, it happened in Enid, Oklahoma, where they got into a gunfight with officers. They were always getting in gunfights. Yeah, Buck died of his head wound and pneumonia after surgery, so eventually they took him to the doctor in Perry, Iowa. Yeah, that was after a gunfight in Dexter, Iowa. They got into a gunfight. Apparently there were 100 spectators nearby. They got away, but Buck got shot in the head. In early September, they risked everything and returned to Dallas to see their family for the first time in 4 months. A couple of gang members were arrested during that trip. Eventually, what happened was one of their gang members turned on them, sold them out, and this retired Texas officer who was hired to hunt him down. And this guy was hired because he was known to shoot to kill, but not to capture. They hired this guy to go after him. He was a retired Texas officer. They knew that he would shoot to kill. That's why they hired him. So a few more people were killed. They escaped a few more times. They hired this guy, Captain Frank Hammer, a former Texas Ranger. He sought to hunt them down. Let's see. They were sold out by, I'm trying to see which one of them. One of them turned, gave the information to the Texas Ranger. Then on Easter Sunday, April 1st, 1934, at the intersection of Route 114 and Dove Road, they approached their vehicles. Oh, this is another encounter. This is as they were getting away from Dallas and on their way to Louisiana. They killed another patrolman, Worthy. Barrow and Parker opened fire with a shotgun. It is believed that Bonnie committed that murder, although they were all firing. Okay, so trying to get down to, by May 1934, Barrow had 16 warrants out against him for multiple counts of robbery, auto theft, escape, assault, and murder in 4 states. This Texas Ranger was tracking him down. Okay, so they were going to Methvin's family in Louisiana. He was a member of the gang, and he sold them out. They met up there with this guy Hammer. I'm trying to see. Also, at this point, she had been shot. He had been shot. She had suffered burns. When they encountered them, the 6th lawman opened fire while the vehicle was still moving. They didn't even stop the vehicle. They caught up to him and just opened fire. Barrow was shot in the head, dying instantly. Parker was heard screaming. The officers fired 130 rounds overall into the car. They emptied their guns, it says. Parker had survived a few bullet wounds over the years. Both of them had, but on this day, that was it. So that's their real story of what really happened. They were ruthless. And yeah, maybe you've seen that car, that bullet-riddled car they were in. You can see it. It's in Nevada. You can still see that car. It's full. It's riddled full of bullets. Is that crazy? You want to walk around, see what else we can see around here? Oops, I just dropped my drink. You've seen the car, Choppy? Just dropped my coffee. Yeah, that car's crazy. They escaped so many times in shootouts. This time, the former Texas Rangers was having none of that. Like, found them. One of the gang members sold them out. They found them. And they just filled them full of lead. Isn't that crazy? Let's walk back up towards Clyde. I was telling Sage that I was coming over here, and I asked him if he wanted to come. He's like, "You want to get up and come with me?" He said no, but he told me I should bring a bottle of that cider and pour it out for Clyde. Do y'all do that in the UK, where like you pour out a drink on someone's grave? I laughed. I was like, yeah, maybe not. So this guy, 1947. But then there's like this kind of grave. You can't even see. A lot of these graves are just someone's initials. It's crazy. So did you ever think you'd see Clyde Barrow's grave? I'm gonna try to see what this guy. He's got a war veteran, died in 1946, served in the U.S. Navy. Interesting. Did you ever think you'd see Clyde Barrow's grave? And his brother Buck, who was shot in the head but didn't go to the hospital. It said in one time they were fleeing, Bonnie and Clyde both got shot in the legs. You want me to leave anything for him? I don't really have anything. I'm gonna pour out some cider if I had some. Like I said, she's not buried here. Didn't expect these graves, Kingas. Whenever I said I'd be at a graveyard. I mean, I just thought it was cool because it's such an old graveyard. And because Clyde is buried here. Maybe I have to take you over to Bonnie's grave. Now, Bonnie wrote a poem. I'll read it at the end of the live stream. I would really like to find the Luponts. I tried to find a map of the graveyard, but it's not mapped out anywhere. See these are like cedar trees. Those are. But Bonnie just didn't get buried here because her mom wouldn't allow it. Trying to see. Yeah, it's a state historical marker. Yeah, see, John and Rosina Lupo. I really wanted to find their graves. But I got here a little early and I was walking around and I couldn't find them. Because they're the early French settlers. This person died in 1898. But I can't find the Lupos. Like I said, I tried to look up a map, but I couldn't find one. Here, that's the Bryants. They died. He died in 1940. So I don't know really where anything is in the graveyard. Barbara Ann Harris died in 1937. Leave nothing, Wayne, they were wrong ones. I don't know what that means, Chubby. 1934, the Baileys. 1933. Trying to look for the old markers. Wow. I can't even read that. Look at some of these, just like can't even, that's just nothing. Yeah, they were hard times, huh? That's what, it was during the Great Depression from Bonnie and Clyde. 1947, 1926. See, here's a veteran. Oops, oh, sorry. Almost dropped it. World War II veteran Raymond Griffith. Private First Class, U.S. Marine Corps, 1960. That guy's what they call grunt. Private First Class. Yeah, I cannot find the French settlers. These are like a tree. A tree marker. Yeah, so when you see one of these in the U.S., these are common in graves still today. They're a tree. They're a member of the Woodmen of the World, which is an organization. It's been around a long time. This guy died in 1912, but these still exist. They still put these up if you're a member of the Woodmen of the World organization. I'm trying to go over here. Maybe I'm looking for the oldest looking graves because I'd really like to find the French settlers. I found the Strucks, and I found a couple of them, but no, this 1905 and 1929. But I cannot seem to find the French settlers. What do y'all think? Was this an okay live stream? 1929, that says. I cannot find the French settlers. 1893, Richard Crowley. Yeah, some of these are really old, huh? Well, I mean, at least for us in the U.S. And this place is just right in the middle of Dallas. 1935, Charles A. Jones, rest in peace. Thanks, Genghis. Yeah, I didn't know what y'all would think about going to a going to a cemetery. Yeah, it's a nice sunny day. Out now on my channel, Lynn and Lynmouth, and oh, the girl giving 10 British facts. They weren't that amazing. I already knew most of them. But when I see a video like that, it usually interests me, you know? So I want to see what it was. But those videos are out now. Coming up in the next 2 or 3 days, I'll have a St. Bees reaction. I have a St. David's reaction. And I have a reaction to Exmoor National Park. Thanks, Chappie. Those are place reactions coming out, the next 3. Also, I have a reaction to the Football Museum in Manchester. I have a reaction to cricket highlights. And I have a reaction to Tar Barrel. The Tar Barrel event where y'all run with that on your backs. Not you, but so those will be the next 6 videos that come out on the channel. Giving you a heads up. But I'm gonna read this poem to you because Bonnie loved to write poetry. And she also liked to take pictures. And they have a lot of her poetry. She left behind diaries. Yeah, I'm discovering all the places in the UK, huh, Adrian? She liked to write poetry. She left it behind. She left her diaries. Her mother refused to allow her to be buried next to Clyde Barrow here, which is what she wanted. Her family, since then, her family around these times is still trying to get her body moved here. Her family currently wants her to be buried next to Clyde. She's buried up in North Dallas. But she wrote several poems. One of them is called The Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde. And it's a very long poem. I'm not going to read it all to you. I'm going to start about halfway in, maybe. Let me see. But this is the poem that's also cited, where she requested to be buried next to Bonnie and Clyde, and she predicts their death. I'll start in the middle. It says, now Bonnie and Clyde are the Barrow Gang. I'm sure you've all read how they rob and steal, and those who squeal are usually found dead. These are her words. There's lots of untruths to these write-ups. They're not so ruthless as that. Their nature is raw. They hate all the law. Stool pigeons, spotters, and rats. They call them cold-blooded killers. They say they are heartless and mean. But I say this with pride. I once knew Clyde when he was honest and upright and clean. But the laws fooled around and took him down and locked him up in a cell. Till he said to me, I'll never be free, so I'll meet a few of them in hell. The road was so dimly lighted, there were no highway signs to guide. But they made up their minds, if all roads are blind, they wouldn't give up till they died. They were going down. That was what she's saying in the poem. Sometimes you can hardly see, but it's a fight man to man, and do all you can, for they know they can never be free. From heartbreak, some people have suffered. From weariness, some people have died. But all in all, our troubles are small, till we get like Bonnie and Clyde. If a policeman is killed in Dallas, and they have no clue or guide, if they can't find a fiend, just wipe the slate clean and blame it on Bonnie and Clyde. There's 2 crimes committed in America not accredited to the Barrow mob. They had no hand in the kidnap demand, nor the Kansas City depot job. A newsboy once said to his buddy, I wish old Clyde would get jumped in these hard times. We've got a few dimes if 5 or 6 cops would get bumped. The police haven't got the report yet, but Clyde called me up today. He said, don't start any fights. We aren't working nights. From Irving to West Dallas Viaduct is known as the Great Divide. She references Dallas twice in this poem. Where the women are kin and men are men, and they won't tell on Bonnie and Clyde. If they try to act like citizens and rent a nice flat, about the 3rd night they're invited to fight by subguns rat-a-tat-tat. Her reference to no matter where they went, they always got in gunfights. In about 3 days. They don't think they're tough or desperate. They know the law always wins. They've been shot at before, but they do not ignore that death is the wages of sin. Someday they'll go down together, and they'll bury them side by side. To few it'll be grief, to the law a relief, but it's death for Bonnie and Clyde. That's just part of her poem, The Ballad of Bonnie and Clyde. They had a death wish. They knew it was going to end in death. That's what Bonnie had to say. Well, I don't think I could find the French settlers. I am going to walk out of the cemetery and just up the street a little bit and show you how close. You got to remember, when this place was first buried, it was just a trail around here. People were just traveling through during the time of the nation, the Republic of Texas. They were just traveling through. Some people died and they buried them here. This is in the prairie lands, the black prairie lands that were in the area and still are, that were built upon. But so you got to imagine, back in 1840, there was nothing here. There's a river, the Trinity River, and it started sprouting up settlements like the French settlement here and like Dallas on the other side of the river. This is because the river is here, and that's why settlements started popping up. But you gotta imagine, back in the day, this was nothing. Nothing was here. Some people died and they buried them. That started a graveyard. But I'll show y'all how close I am to downtown, because if I just walk up the street a little, I am going to be on a busy road. This is Fort Worth Avenue. Here I am from the outside of the cemetery. This is mostly kind of an industrial area that I'm in. But I'm going to show you the sign. Western Heights Cemetery, it says. Now if I just walk down the street, and I am in South Dallas. South Dallas is starting to be a little more gentrified. There's pockets where it's expensive, but basically, if you're a South Dallasan or Dallasite, you work a little harder for your money. It's where the working man lives, and it's really been that way ever since the beginning of Dallas. Eventually, Dallas annexed this settlement and other settlements on this side of the Trinity River, but back in the day, when that was first started, Dallas really didn't exist as anything more than a small settlement. It was on the other side of the river. It might as well have been a million miles away when they first founded this area. But now, you can tell I'm on a busy road, but now it's right in Dallas, in the middle of Dallas, you could say. Like I say, this neighborhood is a working man's neighborhood. It's starting to be a little more gentrified, but it is a little cheaper to live over here. Can you see downtown? Off in the distance, that is downtown Dallas. I live on the other side of it. These are apartments. Way down there is downtown Dallas. Like I say, this neighborhood is starting to be a little bit more gentrified. But ever since the beginning of Dallas, this has been working man's neighborhoods. Over here, where just normal people live, you can see the skyline of downtown. But I'll show you. So, these are the houses over here. Mostly wood. I don't know if you can hear that radio, but that is a Spanish radio station. There are a lot of Hispanics that live over here in South Dallas. You can kind of see what these houses look like. Although there are some parts of Dallas, or South Dallas, that are much older homes, much nicer homes, but this is typical. These are probably all Mexicans that live right in these houses. It's kind of a Mexican neighborhood. But you can see right here, these are new apartment buildings. And they're kind of different from the houses right across the street. All right, y'all. Right at an hour. I hope that was fun for you. Now you can say, hey, I've seen Clyde Barrow's grave. And his brother, Buck. And his family members. Maybe when I have time I'll get up to Bonnie's grave. But that's an interesting poem she wrote, huh? Gives you a little insight that she knew they were gonna die. There was no escaping it. And in that sense, it probably was a little romantic. You know, they didn't care. They were doing what they were doing. And they knew it was going to end bad. At least she did. So yeah, fun live stream today. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It's good to see you all. Genghis, cheers to you. Choppy, good to see you. Adrian, good to see you. Yeah, Adrian, I'm learning all about these places in the UK. Terry, good to see you, buddy. Ben, good to see Ben if he's still here. It's a little quiet today, Ben. But I think that's it. I'm going to sign off and get to work. But good to see you all today. It's always my pleasure. Wayne from Dallas, Texas. South Dallas, Texas. Signing out.